Reluctant Preppers provides educational awareness and commentary only. Opinions expressed do not constitute personalized financial advice. Viewers are encouraged to do their own research and seek qualified personal financial consultation before making investment decisions.
As a responsible person with growing concerns for your privacy and personal liberty, you want to know where we're headed and what you can do about it. We ask the experts what you need to do to take prudent and responsible action to safeguard your family's wealth and well-being, and what basic first steps will help you to be aware and prepared. ReluctantPreppers.com.
Welcome back, Reluctant Preppers. We have a distinguished returning guest. Bill Murphy is the co-founder and one of the anchor people at GATA.org, the Gold Antitrust Action Committee, together with his partner, Chris Powell. Bill, thank you for joining us here again on Reluctant Preppers.
Thanks for having me back, Donegan.
We've visited with you often in the past about some of the unexpected market behaviors that have happened around the precious metals markets that can be described as price suppression manipulation by large bullion banks. But for the past 2 quarters, we've seen more life than we have for years in the gold and silver markets. In fact, they're up like 10% or more in that period of time. And if you could talk to us about what you think the factors are that are influencing this reawakened life in the precious metals markets, and what you think that tells us about the rest of this year ahead.
Sure, Donegan. Well, first of all, they're so cheap. You know, all the other assets in the world have been going up for years and years. And the gold cartel, as GATA looks at it, which is the bullion banks and central banks, have been suppressing the gold and silver prices. And, you know, they've gotten, and to do so, they've had to got rid of a lot of physical gold and physical silver to suppress the price. It's come out recently, for example, that central banks have been buying gold in more than they have in 50 years or something like that. And basically, the supply has been drying up. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, after we had that financial mess at the end of the year, we had a fear trade come into gold, in which, because it was so cheap, all of a sudden people were buying and buying like crazy when people thought if the stock market would collapse, you'd have a liquidity crisis like we had in 2008, and they would go down. This time the opposite happened because there weren't many longs and nobody around really to sell, and people wanted to go to gold this time rather than get out of it on this fear trade. So that, and then the weakness in the dollar helped propel gold up substantially, and we got up to 1326, 1329 the other day, and you know, it was really on the move. And right before the gold move went, for whatever reason, how it came out, the open interest suddenly collapsed in the last part of the move. Then you had the Fed Chairman Powell come out and really caved into the establishment, blah, 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 and not going to be as strict from the monetary issues, and the stock market went nuts. Gold took off, and then all of a sudden they started selling again. So we think that they got the word ahead of time on that and covered the gold and silver. And it's because of this, what we think is physical gold tightness, which has been reported by a number of people in our camp, that this gold is leaving, you know, the dealers and the bullion centers, and it's going to different countries, and it's created a tightness. And they may have a real problem right now that could last throughout this whole year. We'll have to find out. Silver is a little different issue.
You're mentioning about large purchases of gold by central banks and so on. We had Rob Kirby on a little over a month ago, and he has connections in the large-scale, high-volume gold industry for large transactions, way more than what happens at the retail level. And he's talking about visibility through his acquaintances of what he called silly amounts of gold being bought up at the scale that most of us at the retail level can hardly imagine. So that seems to correlate with what you're talking about in terms of drying up of the supply. I wondered if you could also weigh in on, you mentioned recently that you and your partner, Chris Powell, who have been working so hard for so many years at GATA, trying to, first of all, research and document some of the unconventional price actions and trading patterns that have been appearing to not catch the eye of regulators, including the CFTC. But more recently, and I should mention to folks that today is Tuesday, February 5th, 2019, that very recently you got the ear of your U.S. Congressional representative for some potential assistance going forward in pressing some of those questions to the CFTC. Can you fill us in more about that?
Well, it's really Stefan Gleason of Monetary Metals with a big help in working with Chris Powell to get Congressman Mooney on a monetary committee there to send, address the CFTC and ask them to answer GATA's questions. Now we'll see what comes out of it, but they're going to have a lot tougher time with, a congressman really going specifically on what we want to know. The CFTC has been useless. I mean, they're on the side of the bad guys, as I would call it. They don't go anywhere. They don't answer anything. They don't deal with any issues. It's really a scandal, and it's like there's no sheriff, and the people are robbing the town. There's no one there to stop them, and this has been going on forever. And something has to be done about it. And Chris has worked on this for years, and hopefully we'll get someplace in the months ahead.
A recent book out by Nomi Prins on collusion between the U.S. government and the main Wall Street banks. She talks about the amount of multi-million dollars and billion dollars of fines that these banks are subject to for various trespasses of law. You've observed a number of banks, not only domestically but internationally, being actually levied fines for their manipulative trading practices and setting prices, setting interest rates, that sort of thing. Can you fill us in on what we have seen? You just mentioned inaction on the part of certain regulators. What have we seen in terms of action on the part of regulators?
Outside of gold and silver, what haven't we seen? And we've even seen some lately in the silver market in terms of fines. But I mean, I think I mentioned this maybe before, that 3 or 4 years ago, J.P. Morgan was fined $35 billion in 1 year for rigging something like 3 or 4 markets. I mean, it's all rigged. And that's proved by a lot of these fines that you're talking about. And they just, tally it up as part of the cost of doing business. They make so much money because of their rigging operations, they keep doing it. And it just goes on and on. I mean, there's current LIBOR rates. I mean, there's currencies, oil, mortgages, everything.
And in contrast to that, you and the folks at GATA.org have documented these irregularities in the precious metals markets, but you've tried to get the attention of the COMEX, you've tried to get the attention of the CFTC, and they keep giving you a deaf ear. And you've talked to us in the past about how you've even gotten blacklisted from not even being mentioned by a number of mainstream media people who have stopped talking to you after you've brought up these topics. What do you think that might be possible now with your U.S. congressional representative at your side trying to press some of these issues further?
Well, we'll see what comes out of it first and see if this particular individual can get any place with what he's doing and realizes he's got something major on his hands. It's remarkable because the suppression of the gold and silver prices, which is going to create explosions down the road, there is no doubt in my mind they're going to blow up this time, is quite a story. And it's a big deal and affects a lot of people and a lot of markets. And yet the industry won't deal with it, the press won't deal with it, because we're taking on the richest and most powerful people in the world. It's a taboo subject. It just is not to be discussed. It's just like the plunge protection team when Treasury Secretary Mnuchin, around Christmas time, came out and said he was mobilizing the plunge protection team, and that was it. And the stock market has gone straight up ever since they bought the working group on financial markets, mobilized all their colleagues, and they got it going, and then it just fed on itself. I mean, they told everybody what they were going to do, but did you hear the plunge protection team being mentioned in the mainstream press since then? Not once.
On the flip side of that, you sometimes have seen these regular patterns of pressure being brought to bear at opportune times on thin volume, et cetera, that tend to knock down precious metals prices. But has that not been happening to that extent then in the past 6 months that we've been seeing some resilience in the precious metals?
Well, until just a while ago, I mean, silver's been the dog of dogs of all time of markets, what they've done there. And I'm afraid that J.P. Morgan's at it again around Christmas time or the end of the year. The open interest was 174,000 contracts. Now it's all the way up to 10,000 contracts on the COMEX. And because there's no rule of law, they just go at it and sell and sell and sell. And it just scares me because we see the goals. We think the market is pretty tight, as Rob was talking about and other people have. And J.P. Morgan has been able to control the silver market for so long, and they're just at it again. And then less gold can take off here, which it very well could, and I know it's coming this year. Pardon me, I think it's coming this year. It's going to explode. They're just trying to turn the specs. We're getting longer in silver again. Turn them around to sellers like they've done for nearly 8 years now. So it's a very touchy time, let's say, and we'll have to see which one of the two wins out.
We had Ted Butler on about 2 months ago talking about J.P. Morgan taking at last a net long position in silver. In fact, one of the largest net long positions in the history of the world. That was his analysis, at any rate, based on the information that he could obtain. If in fact J.P. Morgan has taken on a net long position in silver of that magnitude, then is there a reason why it would make sense for them to still be holding it back as best they could at this time?
Oh, it's a good point, and it's the whole thing's a big mystery. But all I can say is that was when silver was probably 1440, 1450, and everything has changed in terms of what some of the things that Ted might look at in terms of the open interest situation, the total open interest. And now because of the government shutdown, the commitment of trades report that shows who is doing what is delayed.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's like useless. Like what do you do with information that's a month old?
Yeah.
So I don't know, but I think at some point it's all going to change. And when Morgan runs for the hills, it's going to blow up. One of my favorite topics to bring up to people is in 2010, 2011. The silver open interest was 135,000 contracts all the way up to 50. Now we're at this lowly price when normally open interest contracts. It's 210,000 at the pitiful price of $15.80. And it's just so rigged. And the question is, something's going to blow this thing up. It's going on too long. And I keep looking for signs that that's going to occur. We don't see it yet in silver. In gold's situation, it could be a little, I think it's a bit different.
We haven't asked you this particular question, but it's been raised several times by our viewers, and that is, what is your personal opinion about the importance of holding physical precious metals like silver and gold versus participating in ETFs or other indirect ways of trying to participate in price movements in gold and silver, or even as a hedge against other investments like stocks and bonds?
Well, I'm prejudiced against the ETFs because when I went to speak in front of the CFTC, which they didn't do anything and blacked me out, I was the only person that was blacked out. The biggest ETF, or the people behind the gold ETF, which HSBC was the biggest gold short at the time, and J.P. Morgan is the custodian of the silver ETF. It's like the crooks are they're in charge of the whole thing. So I wouldn't trust them. So I'd go to physical gold and silver. And of course, you've got some real quality gold and silver companies that are really underpriced now and have been, given up for dead. That in many cases, that I think are just going to be spectacular winners over the next year or two.
Right. We've interviewed the CEOs of a number of gold producers and silver producers that are looking forward to that, saying that they have been beaten down multiples of the ratio that the metals themselves have been beaten down. And for those who've been managing their expenses well and managing their balance sheets well and have good reserves ready to draw on out of the ground, they should be positioned well to benefit from a rising tide affecting precious metals to a multiple of that.
It's going to be unbelievable when it finally goes because they're still quiet. They've perked up. For example, the HUI is at 170. It's near recent highs and it's completed a base, but it's still the interest is still not there. I know from money managers and speaking to people, they're just not there yet. And when so much money has been created since the last time they really made big moves, there's so much more money in the world to go after this, not a big sector. They're going to go nuts. And the ones that have been left for dead are going to come alive if they've got something, if they've got the goods. They'll be just phenomenal.
That's one of the points. We're going to be talking with Alistair McLeod tomorrow, and that was one of his points when last time we spoke with him was the amount of currency that's been generated and the amount of debt that's to back that up that's been created since in the decade that's elapsed since the last run up in precious metals, and that is setting the stage for a much more violent move upward, as you keep reminding us, when it finally breaks free. And it's ironic because people who get don't want to talk about it because it wasn't as impressive last year as Bitcoin or whatever. It wasn't as impressive as the stock market, the Dow Industrial Average, when the plunge protection team's in play. Suddenly, it'll be interesting to hear what the tune is when there is this safety play or any other rush to physical returns. Do you believe that that's likely to happen in 2019? And if so, what do you think the factors are that will be behind that?
Well, those people will be the first ones to say, "I told you so." But look, someone like myself, I've been looking for silver to go to 100 and take off in that direction for a couple of years, and I've been, it's just, it hasn't happened. You can't get wronger than that. But this time, what I do think is going to happen, and if Rob's right and some other people I know are correct, they have real problems with gold, and it is going to blow up, and that's why the fear trade kicked in this time versus it going down with the stock market, like many people have thought. So right. I don't think you're going to get the gradual markets that we've had in the past. When they lose control of gold and silver, it's going to be just explosive, and it'll really surprise people. And the gold cartel, as we call it, is going to have some major problems, and things are going to change. And it's just gone on too long. I mean, 7-8 years really of a negative period, except for the very fortunate companies. It's just as I said, I think it's going to change in a major league way, and it'll probably happen out of nowhere.
Bill, for people who want to find out more about your work, your analysis there at GATA.org, and I guess maybe you could also refer them to places that you recommend where else they would look for more insight as well. But can you tell them what insight you provide and where else you look and where they might learn more? Well, I'm at the Metropole Cafe. I've been doing it for 20 years. People can sign up for a 2-week free trial and see if it's of value. And my colleague has been doing his GATA.org thing, which people can sign up on a free list there, doing a great job. And I'll be going to Asia next month and to spread the word, and we're doing what we can to win the day for the most important issue in the gold and silver market, to end this price suppression scheme so the gold and silver can reflect their real values. We'd really like you to circle back with us and reconnect when you find out the results of the investigation or questioning that the U.S. Congressional representative is going to be doing with the CFTC, and what light that will shed on this. And so we're going to keep you back on our list and get you back on here to do a check-in on that for a directional update. And Bill Murphy from GATA.org and Le Metropole Cafe, thanks once again for joining us on Reluctant Preppers. Thank you, Dunnigan. My pleasure. They say the stock market crashed today.
Yeah, I heard that.
Sounds like people's retirement accounts and savings accounts are going to get bailed into the banks.
Yeah.
Looks like pension plans and Social Security are going to get suspended too.
I know.
Sure, I'm glad we decided to put our money into gold and silver instead.
Me too.
Get your first ounce of silver at spot price and free shipping on any order over $99 at sdbullion.com/RP. Hey, Reluctant Preppers. If you haven't heard, we've already started our monthly 1-ounce U.S. Silver Eagle thank you gift to one active Patreon subscriber each month, signed by your host, Dunnigan Kaiser. And you don't want to miss out on that.
Please help us grow by subscribing today at patreon.com/reluctantpreppers.